am super excited to welcome my dear friend from our Career Services Department here at WVU, Chala, to talk to us about the job search process. Chala, excuse me, Chala, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about different elements of job search process and help you come up with a game plan because it can be really stressful times. So we're here as a resource for all of you. So please utilize career services and other resources that are offered through West Virginia University. Like Stephanie said, I am the career development specialist for business and communication field. And I have worked with students from the READ online programs before. They were able to successfully and gainfully employed after they went through the job search process through coaching and mentorship at Career Services Center. So we're here for you. And today we call this a workshop. Maybe we should have called it an information session, to be honest with you. But the reason why we're calling it a workshop is because I'm not going to do a presentation that goes slide by slide, but rather answer some of the most frequently asked questions by our student body and our alumni during the job search process. So there's going to be elements from networking to resumes to interviewing and even salary negotiation in this presentation. So if you have any questions during this information session, please write them down and ask them to me during the Q&A session at the end. So let's get started. So like I said, job search process can be lengthy and can be a little intimidating. So you need to be equipped with the right resources and get into the right mental kind of headspace to ace the job search process. And by numbers, just to give you some context, an average recruiter spends about 10 seconds reviewing a resume. And that's because the volume nowadays with the internet is very, very, very high. So they're not going to have a minute or 2 minutes to spend when they have to screen through hundreds of resumes. So that's basically statistically the average number after your resume gets filtered out through an ATS system, which I will talk very extensively throughout this information session. The other statistics that you need to be aware of is that in order to get called for an interview out of 250 applicants per corporate posting, like about 4 to 6 people on average get called for that interview. So these are the numbers, and that's why you should maintain that motivation throughout the job search process, because it will be competitive and the rejection will be the very nature of the job search process, and doesn't necessarily say much about who you are as a person or professionally what skills you can bring to the table, but rather it's just a part of the process. You can't internalize it. And it's a kind of positive headspace to be if you want to be successful and keep pushing through the process. The other thing is that before you start the job search process, it is very important you do a soul search. And here's what I mean by that. Where do you see yourself seeing after you graduate, after you finish this degree? Because a lot of factors will be contingent upon that fact, based on cost of living. How much money you want to make will be dependent on your location. And when do you plan to graduate? Because depending on that date, you should allow yourself about 6 months prior to graduation to at least start getting yourself familiarized with the job postings, the job functions, and your interests, to allow yourself some time to develop maybe niche skills and gain niche certifications to be successful in the process. The other thing that I really want to quickly highlight here is the job search resources. So Handshake is our job search system that we utilize here at West Virginia University. There are some opportunities there, but please note that it is limited compared to LinkedIn or Indeed or other kind of broad job search resources. And that's because we only accept employers who have indicated an interest in West Virginia University students and alumni. So while the scope may be a little limited, you will get a level of exclusivity you won't get through LinkedIn or other broader job search engines, because these people came to us, to Career Services, with an interest to hire mountaineers. So definitely use it as a resource, but make sure that you don't stick to one resource exclusively. The key to success is utilizing different resources, mobilizing different, networks to find success in this process. The other thing that I will suggest, if you're not aware of it, there's apparently a marketing communications job board put together by the college. And I personally went through it, and it is really amazing. It is, but it includes job postings from alumni who have graduated from the very programs that you're going through now, or company partners that the college have developed over time. So make sure to utilize that through the graduate programs website, I believe, right? Amanda, please correct me if, okay. And the link has been dropped in the chat. The other thing that I highly recommend you do is LinkedIn. Personally, if I get fired today and I have to do it all over again tomorrow, LinkedIn is going to be one of my main resources to find employment opportunities. And not just the job search function of LinkedIn, but the networking aspect of it. I'll make sure that my profile stands out from my competition by adding keywords to highlight my skill set. For example, if you are in digital marketing, for example, can your title say something like master's student in digital marketing, aspiring digital storyteller, or another kind of niche title that highlights what it is that you want to do in the future? So these are the kind of important additions you can make to your LinkedIn page to spice it up a little bit and make it more competitive in the job market. The other thing I would suggest for you is that the About section. Make sure that you have a very compelling About section that a lot of recruiters will read, and in the process, it will really set you apart from your competition. So it's not just a matter of having a LinkedIn account, but using it effectively, because for some job postings, you will see the recruiters, kind of the person who posted that job position on LinkedIn. Would it be worth your time for some of those positions that you're really interested in to reach out to this person and be like, hey, I'm really interested in this position, so I've already applied, but I also want to reach out to you and tell you why I would make a great candidate for organizational culture and for this position specifically. Looking forward to at least obtain an interview to describe my qualifications in person and why I would be a good cultural fit. So that would kind of lead to surprising results that you may have never even imagined. The other thing that I will suggest you use is Alumni Association. We do have a tool called WVU Connect here through the alumni relations at West Virginia University. They offer mentoring opportunities, some job postings, and even today I went up there and one of the first things that popped up was a marketing strategies position here at West Virginia University, which would be relevant for this audience. So they do have not only some job postings, but also mentorship opportunities to connect with WVU alumni who are in the field actively doing the things that you may want to do after graduation. The other resource is Going Global. You will have access to this through Handshake. Actually, at this point, let me take you to our website really quick, just to show you what our website looks like and some of the resources we provide here. So if you go to careerservices.wvu.edu, you will see a shameless picture of me reviewing resumes. But after that, you hover over the Students tab. And Build a Resume contains a lot of information from resume templates to some of the resume tips. But the thing that I would like to show you in terms of job search resources here, it will be under the job search process tab. You will click on it and you will see the login information for Career Shift. This is essentially kind of similar to other job search engines such as Indeed and other platforms. What it does is that it puts together all the results generated by a keyword that you use and puts together in a centralized hub. So it's normally a paid service, but our department pays for it. So you only need to use this WV senior code to have access to it. The other thing is, what can I do with this major? It may sound a little elementary, and we oftentimes use this tool for exploratory students, but it can also serve you really well in the job search process, because for each major, and for you, I will go ahead and click on actually marketing right here. It has some, again, elementary information for some of the, undergraduate students, but if you scroll all the way down, it will have the resources page here from professional associations you may want to be a part of to employment opportunities, different websites that offer opportunities for specific to your field and your industry. So it might be worth your time to kind of explore this a little bit. The other tool, especially if you're interested in employment abroad, or if you're an international student or alumni here at West Virginia University, will be Going Global. And you can have access to Going Global under Job Search for International Students. So it is right here. And this is a sophisticated tool that has country guides for literally almost every single country, job opportunities across the world, also in the United States. So definitely use it through the link provided on your Handshake account, and you will see the little Career Services logo in the top right corner. And again, it's going to give you a lot of information from job search engines to internship search. And again, if you're international, some basic information about your visa processes. So I'll stop my blabbering about the resources. There are so many other resources out there, but these are some of the basic ones. So let me go back to the slide. Let's swap. So yeah, these are some of the resources that I urge you to use, and ownitonline.org here is another resource that is put together by the Department of Labor. One thing that it can really serve you well is identifying different job titles for a keyword, because marketing jobs can be found under all of these job titles. So the more job titles or the more keywords you use in the search function, the more results it's going to generate for you. So it's a very beneficial result to generate as many titles as possible. It also gives you very specific information about the cost of living for a certain area, the salary expectations for a given geographical location, since it is a government website and a tool. So definitely look into ownitonline.org as well. So when it comes to networking, you are Read Online Master students, and your programs are, for the most part, are virtual. So you need to get really comfortable with networking virtually. And that's where LinkedIn kind of comes into play, because up to 80% of today's jobs are landed through some kind of networking. That's a huge number. And the other statistical kind of data we have is that about 66% of all jobs don't even make it to the job search engines. They are filled through some kind of networking, some kind of internal hiring, and that is called the hidden job market. And you don't tap into the hidden job market unless you get referred into it. So never underestimate the power of networking. It is extremely important, and utilize and mobilize your networks. Try to be active on LinkedIn, get comfortable with virtual networking. That will be very important for your future career success. We already talked about this. Let's move forward. So let's address some of the most commonly asked questions that I get for the job search process. The first thing is, I've submitted a ton of applications, but I haven't heard back from anyone. What am I doing wrong? Well, the first thing I will say to you is it's always a matter of quality over quantity. Yes, you are applying or submitting tons of applications, but those applications should really be tailored specifically to the job description. Before you submit any application, you have to sit down and read the job description, focus on the keywords, key descriptions in this job posting, and then make sure that your application document reflects that. It is specifically tailored for the company and that job posting. And it's extremely important to do this customization. Otherwise, you may not get the responses that you may look for. The other thing here that I really want to focus on is that, are you really applying to the right jobs for you? Because if there's nothing wrong with aiming high, but if you don't have the direct experience to be successful in a position, maybe consider downsizing and look for some of those stepping stone positions to give you the credentials to kind of aim for maybe a managerial role in the future. So make sure your credentials are making you qualified for the jobs that you're going for. Otherwise, that could be another reason why you're not getting as many responses as you would like. The other question that we get oftentimes is, will applying to a job in a different state hurt my chances of getting hired? And you'll hate me, but I will say it, it depends. And nobody likes the answer, it depends, but it truly does depend. If the company does not have the funding for relocation expenses, and if you're an out-of-state candidate and in their candidate pool, let's say they have lots of qualified in-state candidates, chances are they will prioritize in-state candidates over out-of-state candidates. However, if the company is known for hiring candidates all across the country, and if you have developed really niche, high in demand skills required in the industry, you may get calls regardless of your location. So the most important thing here is to showcase that you are open for relocation. And the best places to highlight that is either an objective statement on your resume, or maybe in the contact information saying something like open to relocation. Or in your cover letter, in the first paragraph, you can say something like, I'll be graduating with my master in digital marketing in May, and will be relocating to the Jacksonville, Florida area. So that will immediately kind of erase any issues or concerns that they may have about your physical location. So the other question that I would like to highlight is, I need experience to get a job, but I need a job to get experience. What can I do? Which is a conundrum that we face oftentimes. So the good news is that you don't necessarily need to have a full-time paid position to be relevant in the job market. The degrees that you're getting through Reed online programs are very applied programs that give you lots of experience while you are going through the master's program. By that, I mean, think about your class project experiences. Think about all the things that you're doing through your relevant courses, maybe individual projects or group projects. Maybe then create a class project experience section in your resume and highlight those experiences. Would it be worth maybe typing the project where you ran a marketing campaign for a hypothetical or real company? That is real world experience. While it may not be in a full-time paid environment, that still gives you the niche skills and qualifications if you were to use different software skills or learn how to do a little bit of maybe HTML or Canva or Photoshop skills, right? So it is really important to tap back into your experiences in your master's programs and put them first over some of the part-time positions where you may have served or you may have done some other things which still look great on the resume from an accountability and responsibility standpoint, but the most relevant stuff should come first. The other thing that you should consider is it may take a little extra time on your part, but volunteer opportunities oftentimes turn into full-time opportunities. You can consider doing freelancing work, especially if it costs the company less to hire you while you may be inexperienced to kind of complete a one-off project than hiring a company which will be expensive to complete the same task. They may give you those kind of opportunities. There are apps for that. It's also a great resume builder. So think about those things and think creatively. And the fact of the matter is that you don't need a full-time paid position to be relevant on your resume. The other thing that I would like to highlight in the job search process is how to identify and handle job scams, because they oftentimes become very concerning. So if you have never applied for the position but receive an interview request, or let's say even worse, a job offer, tread carefully, because it's never a good practice. While you may get some invitations to, let's say, interviewing through a handshake or LinkedIn, sometimes these things happen. If that happens to you, immediately move forward and do a research on the company. Do they have a credible website? Do they have a credible URL that is not misspelled? When you search the recruiter that reaches out to you, that is supposedly affiliated with that company. Can you find a company profile for this person? Do they have a LinkedIn presence? Do they have social media presence? How is their kind of grammar, their tone? How is the job description? Is it kind of too generic and broad? Because that's a red flag, right? If a position for a digital marketing specialist says something like attention to detail, hard worker, and that's pretty much the only qualification, that's a red flag. So be aware of these cues. And like I said, you're going to have to do some research on the company. Check resources such as glassdoor.com or indeed.com to see if this company has any presence on those platforms, if they have any previous employees commented on the credibility of the organization. And these organizations should also be either accredited or rated by the Better Business Bureau. So look for these kind of cues to identify whether or not they are scams or not. So the last question here, actually, I wanted you to wait till the end of the presentation to ask questions, but I think it's better to make it a little bit more engaging instead of me going through all this information for the next hour. After the last question that I'm going to address here in a second, if you have any questions about the job search process, please go ahead and direct them to me. And I will try to maybe answer questions after each section. Does that sound better, Amanda, to do that rather than wait till the end?
That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you stay motivated and optimistic in the midst of a job hunt? And I kind of touched base with this earlier. It can be very daunting and very frustrating. It takes a lot of time, and you will need to be able to handle rejection very effectively because you will get more no's than job offers. And it's important that you don't internalize these things. It is important that you understand it doesn't reflect on your character or your professional skills, but rather it's just the nature of the process for everybody across the board. I've experienced it. Amanda probably experienced it. Everybody experiences it because it's a tough process. So the key to success is remaining motivated. So for that, you have to maintain your mental health. Don't neglect your self-care. Don't neglect your self-care. It is very important in the process to do the things that you like so that it will keep that motivation going for you and you will keep pushing, because it can get very daunting really quick. If you're applying for the right positions and if you have the right application package, it's only a matter of time. You just have to keep pushing and give yourself at least 6 to 9 months before graduation to successfully land on a position by the time you graduate. So let's see, I have some, would you prefer we type them out? Absolutely, Ashley. If you would like to type them out, that would be great. I can just read them off so that it will be beneficial for the recording in the future as well. If you have any questions, go ahead.
I can ask as well. Amanda said that I could unmute myself if that's okay.
Whatever you prefer, whatever you feel more comfortable with is okay with me.
Okay. So I was really intrigued with the job experience because in my current field, it's such a niche market. When looking for positions, I find that a lot of them require, roughly 3 to 5 years of experience.
Sure.
And what I've tried doing is essentially buying that time with either certifications or other higher education opportunities.
Yeah.
Would you, recommend that, like, as a recruiter, would you see that as, equivalent to professional experience, or would you recommend something else?
Yes, oftentimes you will see in the job postings that it's either 3 to 5 years of experience or commensurating education. Right? So you can definitely close that gap, narrow that gap with, further education, obviously graduate studies, different certifications. And again, those experiences don't have to be paid full-time positions. If you freelance, let's say, so this program, let's say, is 2 years, and during that time frame, you either did various volunteer work or freelance your skills to create active marketing campaigns or some PR work or some data marketing type of work for one-off projects, that is still considered experience, especially if you do these one-off things over a big time frame or lengthy time frame, that will give you the experience or the commensurating experience that they're looking for. So absolutely keep doing what you're doing. Certifications, master's level education, and volunteer or freelancing work should close that gap if you don't have the official paid full-time 3 to 5 years of experience.
Okay. And then to follow up on that, I'm sure, a number can't be assigned to, certain levels of education or certifications, but I would say whenever, recruiters are looking at, education in lieu of professional experience, is there any type of equivalency that applicants should kind of keep in mind?
It will largely depend on the position. And again, I will add this to many of my answers, and you will probably hate me for it, but it's truly the correct statement to make in this at this point. It will largely depend on the position. So I will kind of cover this in the following questions, but let me kind of do a little preview. It is very important to, again, the soul search and understand what type of job titles you're going for. Sit down and maybe check a few job descriptions for the type of positions that you're interested in. And across the board, what kind of themes, what kind of commonalities do they share in terms of certifications, softwares, technical knowledge required? If you keep seeing a certain type of skill set or certification over and over and over again, it is probably worth investing in that. And I think it would be a much better approach than literally assigning a number, like X number of certifications, because if they're not related to the industry that you're going into, it doesn't matter how many you have. It's, again, quality over quantity. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you. And I do have one last question
Sure.
that might lead into the next part.
Sure.
So you mentioned staying, motivated and optimistic while job hunting. And definitely in my market, it's really hard to get a, quick response for interviews or any type of follow-up. What do you suggest are best practices for following up on jobs that you've applied to without being annoying?
Yeah, that is a good question. So if it's just a matter of application, I think the advice about LinkedIn still goes. Would it be beneficial to invest in some of those premium features on LinkedIn and maybe looking for those companies on LinkedIn and seeing the HR representatives or potentially hiring manager for that specific role you have applied to, and try to network and sending the message, oh, hey, I'm really interested in your company and this role. I've already submitted my application, so I just want to follow up with you to reiterate why I make a good candidate for this position. Hopefully, I will be given a chance to interview and explicitly describe why I would be the best qualified candidate for this position. So that's one way of going about it. If you have networked with this individual, let's say in a virtual career fair or maybe a local career fair in the state or city that you live in, thank you letters after that interaction is really, really important. We suggest that after each interview or after each interaction with a recruiter at a networking kind of capacity, you send that thank you letter of thank you so much for your time, hoping to further this conversation over an interview for this specific position. So that type of thing. It is not a clear-cut answer, and it will depend on your creative thinking too, because most people don't even think to do this connection via LinkedIn thing. And it is very important. It's just a matter of taking an additional step and showing them that you are willing to go above and beyond, and not, not necessarily not going to take no for an answer, but how do you set yourself apart from your competition? And what are some of the additive things you do aside from just hitting that apply button? So I think that LinkedIn and thank you letter after networking it could be a good example. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, so this is what we have for the job search process in general. Now we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about the resumes. And I always talk to my undergrads that it takes 4+ years to build a good resume. And for you professionals, it is very important that you acknowledge the resumes are living documents. They will live on. You will probably have to update it every year or so, even if when you are gainfully employed, because your experiences, your skills, your qualifications, they improve and add over time. So you need to make sure that your resume is reflective of that, because you never know when you may need that resume in the future. And always be up to date about the trends in the job market and what should and should not be included on resumes. For example, 20 years ago, a physical address was a requirement on a resume. Nowadays, we advise against that because it kind of creates a safety issue with how connected we are with internet, with social media. If there's a potential, let's say, a stalker situation, do you really want people to know exactly where you live, where you may have posted this resume on LinkedIn or other platforms? So those are the kind of things that you should be in the lookout for, and always keep yourself updated with the job search practices and trends. So we already talked about the importance of resumes and how they kind of tie into the job search process. But let me highlight one thing here really quick: applicant tracking systems. So it is increasingly common to use what we call a software that is ATS. That is short for applicant tracking systems. And these are sophisticated softwares created with, computer science data, and their main role is to screen out candidates when the companies receive a lot of applications per job posting, because they don't have to sort through these resumes or cover letters manually. So instead, they create the job description, fill that job description with keywords, key skills, and key qualifications. And then later on, whenever you submit your resume, this software is going to scan your resume and look for word by word matches from the job description, and whether you actually include those keywords, those jargons, those sentence structures on your resume. That's how they scan your resume and then see whether or not you are a percentage match for the position. And if you are above a certain percentage, only then will you be sent to a hiring manager or an HR professional. So it takes a skill and almost like an art form to get around these systems. And luckily for you, here at Career Services Center, we have employed a tool, a software that's going to accomplish that for you and show you whether your resume is ATS compliant or not. So in order to have access to this tool, we will need to add you manually to the system. The system is called Quincia. So if you'd like to benefit from this service, if you want to use it to see whether or not your resume is compliant with the requirements and if it would get around the ATS systems, please drop your mixed email address in the chat, and Amanda or Stephanie will take those emails and then send them to me later on to add you on Quincia. If you're watching this recording later on and if you want to utilize this service, please contact Career Services Center so that you can be given access to Quincia. It also helps you with the interviewing. So it is created by an artificial intelligence. So it actually assesses your interviewing skills, your answer content, your eye contact, a lot of different dynamics and elements that go into effective interviewing. And it gives you actually feedback. In your answer, for example, you should add X, Y, and Z skills. You didn't talk enough about those skills. So that AI actually gives you active feedback to improve not only your resumes, but also your interviewing skills. So please go ahead and do that now, and then we can add you to the system. Perfect. So the next thing that I would like to talk to you about is drafting your resumes using examples from our website. There are a lot of things that can throw off an ATS system, and I'm going to talk about those things in the questions here in a second. So we don't want you to be eliminated in the process because you didn't know what kind of template to use, and you were eliminated by default because, again, you didn't know the best practice. In order to prevent that from happening, on our website, I have shown you the Students tab. Under Students, you will see the build a resume section, and we have a lot of ATS approved templates provided or created for you. Feel free to download a Word document, Word template from that resource and use it. You can just plug in your information, make it your own. It is guaranteed to get around most ATS systems and be ATS compliant. So in terms of guidelines, I think we can cover these things up in the questions. So I'm just going to skip this portion or not. Let me go back to my slide. So one question that I always get is, how do I go from having a good resume to having a great resume? So the main thing here is that a good resume focuses on your previous accomplishments, your previous, what you did in your previous job. A great resume talks about the impact you had. So it is really important not just describing what it is that you did, but as a result, what happened? What results were you able to achieve? What accomplishments did you actually get? Did something that you created or did increase the processes or efficiency by 5%, by 10%? Did the social media campaign that you ran increase follower engagement by 30%? Did you raise the followers from 10,000 to 500,000 in 3 months, for example? Those are the kind of specific quantifiable accomplishments that you really should focus on. And the other thing kind of goes back to that customization. A great resume is also tailored for each job description, for each company, every time you apply to a new position. So you really need to read through that job description, identify the key elements, and make sure your resume reflects those keywords, jargons, qualifications, and skills. So the next question is, how can I make my resume gets past an ATS? Again, use literally word by word those keywords, key skills, and key qualifications. Use Quincia to make sure that your resume is ATS compliant, because every company, even WVU, uses an ATS system. It's called Taleo here at WVU, at WV Medicine, as of 2023. Different companies use different systems, so you really need to make sure that you get around that system. The other thing is making sure that you don't use columns, shading, maybe different shades in the background. Don't use that, it confuses it. Tables you shouldn't use. Underlying kind of confuses certain ATS systems. Multiple fonts should not be used, like for example, Times New Roman and then Calibri interchangeably. It kind of creates confusion with certain ATS systems. Again, not every ATS system is created equally. They have bells and whistles. They are different. So yeah, use these resources to make sure you are covering all your bases. What skills are impressive to have on a resume? This will be another one of those hated "it depends" answer, because it will widely depend on the job description you're applying to. For example, one position may value web development and HTML skills, versus another position may value SEO, PPC, and digital sales, digital marketing type skills. So it will really depend on the job description, and it's up to you to determine. But at the same time, there are certain skills that are widely accepted for, like, regardless of the industry. If you speak a foreign language, make sure you include it on your resume. If you have project management experience or leadership experience, by giving concrete examples and perhaps certifications, you still need to mention them on your resume. And also any type of data analysis, analytics types of tools, software should be also mentioned on your resume. So I did receive a question from Ashley. Do recruiters automatically reject resumes with minor spelling errors? Yes, and I will get to that. Yes, they do. Because if I'm a recruiter that sifts through, at least, let's say 30 to 50 resumes after the ATS system, and if I have a good qualified candidate pool, I'm not going to waste my time on someone's resume who didn't even grammar checked their document. So have your resume literally reviewed by either a career development specialist or use Quincia. Make sure you double check, triple check for any grammatical or punctuation errors, any typos. It is very important and definitely raises a red flag. And it was kind of the answer to question 9 when reading a resume. What red flags do recruiters look out for? Definitely typos. That's number 1. And the other thing that they look for is any stretches or exaggerations or straight up lies on a resume. It's really easier to cross-reference with your previous employer to unearth that information. So recruiters are really well connected. They can really reveal the truth pretty quickly. I would not even attempt that because it's going to affect your reputation in the future. You don't want to be red flagged in any company's ATS system. The other thing that if, let's say, I highly encourage you to include all your skills. Let's say you just started using Python for programming for the first time, maybe a few months ago, have that on your resume, but next to it indicate your level of proficiency. For example, beginner proficiency. If you are well-versed in Google Sheets or Excel, say advanced. As long as you indicate that level of proficiency, I would put pretty much anything on my resume, as long as you're being honest and you're not stretching the truth. The other thing that oftentimes we get a lot is, how do I explain gaps in my resume? So here's the thing. In today's market, especially after COVID-19, a lot of people have gaps on their resume. So it's not a direct downgrade in your job search process, but it needs to have good justification and a good explanation for recruiters to be comfortable with it, because they will likely ask you questions regarding when, why, or how you had that gap. So I will talk more about that in the interviewing section, because that's where those kind of questions will affect you. But the most, I think, important thing, actually, let me just explain it now. So the gaps will depend on why you have a gap, right? People have different circumstances. If you voluntarily left your position, it is important to highlight your motivations. Why did you leave that position? If you were laid off or maybe asked to leave, recruiters may ask questions about those factors as well. So it won't be same for anybody. If you left to take care of an elderly family or family member or recover from an injury, your answer will be different than I just left to complete my master's in integrated marketing communication, for example. So I think fact of the matter is, describe why you left and why you have the gap. If it's for something remotely constructive, highlight that. For example, I complete my master's in digital marketing, or I focused on my volunteer work to create a mentorship program for inner city youth in Baltimore. Those are the kind of productive things that will make it a little bit better for recruiters. And the other thing is, not every answer is going to be that clear cut. In that case, just mention the reason briefly. So if you, again, took time off for a personal injury or to take care of a family member, you address that. But the very important thing here is making sure that it was a past issue and it will not affect your performance moving forward. Okay, just to give you a few examples. Let's say you are a mom who took some time off from the workforce. You can say something like, I took a break from working in the office after the birth of my first daughter. However, during that process, I didn't stop completing law completely. I still provided pro bono services for a nonprofit organization 1 day a week. Now that my daughter is school age, I'm really excited and eager to come back to the workforce and utilize the skills that I have developed over time. So that's a good kind of explanation to provide for a voluntary separation. And the other thing is, let's say if you were subjected to a layoff, you can say something like, If you're in the marketing field, you have likely heard of the mass layoffs by the XYZ company. Unfortunately, I was one of the employees who were affected by those layoffs. So I wanted to make sure that my steps were taken very strategically. After my termination, I made sure to take a lot of marketing related courses to hone in on my skills and gain XYZ certification. Now that I developed those skills, I'm really eager to come back to the workforce and work for a company who will appreciate those skills. So that's kind of a good way to address the gaps in your resume, in your interview, also somewhere in your cover letter if you haven't gotten to the interview phase yet. So another question, will recruiters choose applicants with no gaps versus ones with gaps? Like I said, the gap will not disqualify you immediately, meaning if you have a kind of good justification for that, if it makes sense, if it doesn't create any judgment about your motivations, whether your or your capability to do your job effectively in the future, I don't think it's going to be a point of determination, because companies hire you for one reason only: your ability and qualifications to do the job and do the job effectively. If you have top-notch, like industry cream of the crop, skills and qualifications, they may still choose you over the other candidate who don't maybe have gaps, but also not necessarily have the related experiences. So it's not going to automatically disqualify you. Some recruiters may still choose people without gaps, and it's up to their discretion. But overall, especially after COVID, they are more forgiving of gaps than they were in the past. Hopefully this answers the question. All right, so finally, and I get this a lot in this field, are creative resumes a good idea? So here's the thing. You are in a creative field, and it's very important for these programs, for these industries. So why not communicate your creativity on your application documents? I've seen people use Vine videos in the past, or infographics, or even candy wrappers as a non-traditional creative resume, which is great, especially in a competitive job market. It will likely set you apart from your competition. Unfortunately, it will also, it's one of the ways to annoy a recruiter, an overworked recruiter who needs to scan through hundreds of resumes as well. So I think use caution when you are using creative resumes, because it's not even a matter of overworked recruiter at this point, it's a matter of ATS. If you're applying to an organization who has an ATS system in place, it will likely not accept this creative format, unfortunately. If you are talking with someone, let's say at a career fair, or have an opportunity to hand this resume over to a human being, by any means, go crazy. If not, if you're kind of submitting through a formal application process, then think about your audience. Where are you applying? Are you applying to a graphic design firm, a funky art gallery, or maybe an uber hip, ad agency who appreciate this kind of creative outlet? By any means, go ahead and use your creative resume. But if you're applying to a pharmaceutical company, or higher education, banking, or any other kind of traditional setting, they will likely appreciate a traditional black and white resume in that case. So maybe have two versions and select the version carefully depending on your audience would be my recommendation. Because be original, like selecting a hot pink resume paper or using a funky template off Canva may set you apart, but what does it really say about your qualification if it's not original, if it's been used or done before? So make sure you are original in the execution of your idea and with your document. So hopefully these will help with guidance when it comes to resumes and application materials. Let me ask you if you have any further questions on the resumes. I know I'm kind of storming because didn't account for the time. An hour may not be sufficient, so I'm trying to get everything done. But definitely these questions are very valuable, and I would like to answer them if you have any more questions. All right, so let's move forward with the interviewing skills. Interviewing is truly an art form. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. And every single person doesn't matter if they're the CEO of a company or an entry-level employee. Everybody needs interviewing help, and everybody needs to practice their interviewing skills at all times. It's like a motor skill almost. The more you do it, the better you become at it. So there are certain ways to make sure that you're as prepared as possible. First of all, be positive. The interview starts the moment you wake up, not necessarily the moment you set foot in that organization. We always ask our front desk people, for example, whenever they call the candidate to schedule the interview, were they positive? Were they kind of easy to work with? So we take those reviews into consideration. So your interview actually starts way before the interview itself. So kind of be positive and excited about the process. The other thing is do your research. It is extremely important that you know about the company, their CEO, their competitors, vision, mission statements, their industry, what they do, what they produce. So after you do this research, it is very important that you basically use examples and study your resume. It's impossible to gauge for every single question that they're going to ask you, but there are certain things that you can do to be as prepared as possible. And I will cover that in my questions here in a second. You will practice your interviewing and decide what to wear. And our recommendation is always a business professional interview attire. You can never go wrong with a suit, especially in the industries that you guys are going to be going into. But know the difference between business professional and interview attire. I can be business professional and not be suitable for an interview. For an interview, you have to be a lot more conservative. Stick to the power colors, blacks and whites and navies, and suits, minimal jewelry, minimal perfume or other accessories. Making sure that you're as conservative as possible is the key. So about some of the questions, how do you prepare for a phone screen? Just like the name suggests, phone screen is a screening process, and they will likely ask you screening questions, some of the logistical questions. The first thing you can do for a phone screen is making sure that your voicemail box is empty, so that if they can't reach out to you, they can leave you a voice message. Making sure that your voice message welcome tone is set by you and it is professional. And then afterwards, you need to get clear on your details. For example, your start date, your salary expectations, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, how to determine that, your availability, whether or not you're willing to relocate, whether or not you are willing to travel if the position has a travel component to it. The other thing that you should do is obviously researching the company, researching everything there is to know about that organization, because in that phone screen, they are going to make sure that the candidates are interested in the organization and not just a paycheck. So these are some of the things that you can do for a phone screen. It will likely take a 30-minute conversation to get these logistical things out of the way. What questions should I ask in an interview? And again, there is not a limit to the questions that you can ask during an interview. The most important thing is that those questions should be well thought out and elicit critical information. So what kind of employees succeed in this role? What differentiated top performers from mediocre employees in the past? What will be the performance evaluation criteria for this position? So can you tell, I read about the XYZ initiative online on your website. Can you explain how your team is involved with this initiative and how I can be a part of it if I were to get this position? Or can you describe me your company culture? These are very well thought out, important questions that you should ask. Never ask questions that can easily be researched. For example, who's your CEO or what do you guys do? So the next thing is, what are some of the red flags you should look out for in a job interview? Well, unfortunately, they're kind of difficult to pick up on. Nobody is going to come off toxic at first, but always be in the lookout for if the recruiter or any employee badmouths other employees, present or past. Make sure that, they mention why they're trying to fill that position, why the previous person left, whether they got promoted or left. Like, they should give you some explanation if you ask why the position kind of opened up. Kind of try to get a sense of the cues, like of the workplace culture. For example, if they mention, all we do is work 24/7, it's very active, which may be for some people, but may not be for those who look for work-life balance. If they let slip that they have a high turnover rate, that could be a big flag. So you may want to rethink some of these elements moving forward if you pick up on some of those cues. Another kind of red flag for you is the broad generic job description or kind of vague job description. If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you may be upheld to unfair evaluation standards, or you may not juggle the tasks adequately because something that is out of a left field may be thrown at you. You may be underprepared. So be aware of those things. Now, the common interview mistakes you can make is, well, besides the obvious of showing up late or dressed unprofessionally or presenting yourself unprofessionally, being unhygienic, the most commonly made mistake is lack of research. You really need to do your research on the company, check some of the, questions on our website, on our Career Services website. Under students, you will find a tab that says prepare for an interview. And there we will have a kind of PDF for you that contains some of the most commonly asked interview questions. It is important that you familiarize yourself with those questions and anticipate for what kind of questions they can ask you in the interview based on the job descriptions. Again, what is important for this role? And oftentimes those things can fall onto general themes like time management, prioritization skills, conflict resolution skills, kind of examples of the similar projects you've done in the past that are indicated in the job description for the future. Sit down and study your resume. Come up with stories based on the STAR technique. Give concrete examples, because another mistake you can make is whenever they ask you behavior-based questions such as, tell us about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker and how did you resolve this conflict? If you go on and say like some generic story, it's not going to be effective, because they're going to want you to give a specific point in time where you may have butted heads with a coworker or a supervisor, and how you proactively and positively address the issue. That's what they want, and not necessarily your general way of resolving conflict. So these are some of the common interview mistakes. Let's address the weakness question, which comes up a lot and kind of throws a lot of students off. So the fact of the matter is that please don't give them an eye roll cliche of, I think my biggest weakness is that I am such a hard worker and all I do is work. Like, no. Be honest about the mistake or about the weakness, but make sure that your weakness is not a deal breaker. For example, if you're going into a job that has a lot of client interface, or for me, for example, I do a lot of presentations. If I were to talk about my social anxiety as a weakness in my interview, it's likely that I wasn't going to get this job, right? So identify what things may be an active deal breaker for the job description, and find things that are true about you, but not necessarily a direct conflict of the job description. For example, I would say that my biggest weakness is my inability to say no to other people, because generally I'm a very eager person and I want to jump in and help a lot of people and be involved as much as I can. But it created issues with timing and time management for me in the past. Now, whenever I get pitched a new proposition, I always take a step back and I say, I would love to help you with this project and I'm really excited. It sounds awesome. Let me get back to you maybe in 3-4 days after I check my schedule and make sure that I'm covering all my bases. So it kind of gives me some time to sit back and think about my schedule while still honoring their request. So something like that would go a long way with answering the weakness question. I was honest. I made sure that it was an issue in the past and not anymore. So this is the kind of answer you can give to the weakness question. The other thing is how to address a career change. So their goal here is to understand your motives, your goals, whether you're going to be in this long term. So answer also head on to this question, and don't focus necessarily on the negatives of your past industry, but rather what excites you about your future industry, the favorable things, what you hope to gain from your future industry. You can talk about why and how you were motivated to go into the new industry that you're interviewing for and how passionate and excited you are about it. Also highlight what skills you will be bringing to the table from your previous industry that are still relevant and applicable to the future industry. That's pretty much how you address those questions about career change. Don't beat around the bush, be straight, but again, don't focus on the past as much, but rather excitement about the future should be the way to go. Excitement, and also I should say preparation. So these programs hopefully are preparing you for that industry change if you are one of those students who are making or getting ready to make that industry change. Focus on the positives and what you can bring to the table, both from former experiences and what you're learning through the Reed Online Master's programs. Any other questions at this point? And Amanda, I may pass our time by about 5 minutes. Is that okay, or should I pause here?
I think that would be okay if others need to leave. Again, we will be sharing this. One thing too, I want to say on interviewing, always be nice to the support staff that you meet.
Yeah.
So strike up a conversation with the secretary while you're waiting to go in or something like that, because they will give feedback on you as well, to the interviewing team. So definitely be nice to your the secretaries in the office.
100%. Like Amanda, whenever we hire for career services, one of the main things we ask actually that question to our front desk people and ask like, okay, was this person easy to work with? Were they flexible when you were trying to determine the dates? Were they positive? Were they excited? How was their affect, their tone? These are very, very important information that a lot of organizations use nowadays. Like I said, your interview starts the moment you wake up that day, not necessarily as you set foot into the interview room. So you should always be positive and excited and be nice to every single individual you interact with that day. Okay, if we don't have other questions, let's move forward to the final part, which will not take that long. So salary negotiation and benefits, I usually do like an hour-and-a-half workshop or presentation on this. So I'm going to try to fit it into this next like 5-minute time frame. But it is, a lot of people don't know how to navigate salary negotiation. Even seasoned professionals in the field don't know that they're supposed to be negotiating. Don't leave any money on the table. In some industries, you're actually expected to negotiate because that's what you're going to be doing for them in the role that you're going to be you're trying to get, right? So it is very important that you're assertive, you stand up for yourself and do your research. Those are the main elements you need to pay attention to. When it comes to salary negotiation, knowing your worth, doing your research is number one thing. And these are some of the resources that you can utilize to determine your going rate for a specific geographical location for people in similar skills in your industry. I would use LinkedIn Salary to determine the going rate for like the LinkedIn positions. And then Glassdoor.com is very, very effective because it's essentially past or current employees of a specific organization disclosing their salaries so that they are actual real data of real people in that organization. So you can kind of get an estimate based on years of kind of experience and what they're making, so that it is kind of important data point when you're trying to determine your salary expectations. The other thing that I highly urge you to use is onitcenter.org. Or it's called onetonline.org. Actually, they changed their URL. And it is government, it's put together by Bureau of Labor Statistics, so it's government data. And it gives you state by state, city by city, based on job functions, the going rates for specific positions. So don't use just one resource. Utilize all of these things to determine an average rate for a specific industry, for a specific geographical location, which will be your going rate, which will be your minimum acceptable salary. So make that the bottom or like the lower end of the range that you're going to be giving them. Because another suggestion that I can make here is that never give your salary expectation in the form of a specific on the dot kind of number. It should be a range because it kind of gives you more flexibility than a specific number, because if you're kind of below what they're going to offer you, and if you stick with just a specific number, well, guess what? Chances are they're going to stick with that. However, if you give them a range, and if the number happens to be in the middle of that range, you will have opportunity to flex it to the higher or upper end of that range a little bit easily, or a little easier, I should say. So these are the resources, utilize them, because again, number one thing you should do is to determine that going rate as a range. The other thing is that in any negotiation situation, it doesn't have to be a salary negotiation. It could be any type of negotiation. Leverage is what you need, right? Without leverage, there's no negotiation. So for you is marketable and niche skills in your industry. That's where your leverage is going to come from. If you have really cream of the crop, like specific certifications and specific experience that has a lot of demand in the market, you will have a lot of leverage. Another leverage is the job offer. If the company goes through this process, which is very lengthy, they pour their resources into the hiring process, cost them money, and decide to offer you the position, chances are they really want to hire you. That kind of gives you some leverage, and that's when, and only when, should you discuss salary with a potential employer, unless they bring it up first in the interview. So my words of wisdom is that the salary conversation should never be initiated by you as the candidate during the interview process. And it's a conversation after or at the time of the offer, if they decide to give you an offer. However, it is up to the employer's discretion to whether or not they want to discuss salary with you in the interview process. So there's a timing issue there too. So for example, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how should I respond when someone asks what my salary expectations are? Timing is very important, because if you disclose your salary expectation early on, it kind of puts you in a box and makes the negotiation phase a little difficult in the future, because once they get that number, they will likely stick to it. So at the beginning, if you can, try to navigate that question strategically by saying, as I'm still learning about this position, I haven't set my salary expectations concretely. While I've done my research and have some idea about the going rate for similar positions in the industry, and I hope and expect that you will compensate according to those market trends for similar positions. However, I would like to first talk to you about why I would make the best qualified candidate for this position, and what I can bring to the table before we discuss salary any further. So you kind of adequately pitching your skills, your niche qualifications, getting them excited will give you more leverage. So try to delay that question if you can, if they ask you the question early on. And if they ask you the question at the end of the interview, you will then follow the guidelines that I've provided you with by providing them the range that you have come up with based on the research, and go from there. So the other thing is, what is the best way to negotiate your salary? It depends on a lot of strategy. Honestly, there's not a clear-cut answer, but it shouldn't be in the form of a demand. It should be in the form of a, here's my value proposition. This is what I can bring to the table. So I think based on my skill set and based on the market rate, this position should range from this range to this range. So unfortunately, the offer that you made falls a little short of that. Is there any way we can discuss and maybe bring that number higher to the X amount? Is the best way to negotiate that salary if you get a number that's a little lower than expected? It's not a matter of making demands. It's a matter of making a kind of valid business case for yourself and highlighting the skills, qualifications, and the leverage you have to get to that point. So hope this makes sense. Like I said, this is a hour-and-a-half workshop I fit into like about 7 minutes. So if you need more help, individual help with salary negotiation, make sure to visit Career Services Center, contact us, and we do offer individual help with salary negotiation appointments. So I do have a few questions here. If salary is displayed in a job posting, is it appropriate to ask if there is a range opportunity for an increase upon job offer acceptance? For example, if during a screening call, the hiring manager asks if you, the applicant, has any questions, would it be appropriate to address that before investing resources and applying? So if the number posted on the That's a good question. So let me think about that before investing.
As you're thinking about that, Chala, I can maybe
Huh?
chime in and say, when I was interviewing for a position prior to WVU, the salary was really, really low. But so, and the hiring manager knew that, so he made sure to address it as I have plans based on after your first year on how we can increase your salary.
Yep.
So that could be a good way to offset that, is if I meet XYZ benchmarks, could we see it
Yep.
possibly for salary increasing in the future? So if you're unsure about that salary, I would frame it as something like that, especially if it's on the lower end of what you think is expected.
Mhm.
But let's say you still enjoy the position, want to be hired. So that, I don't know if that'll help you, Ashley.
Mhm. Thank you for that. That's definitely an element for future trajectory of that salary. Is there any flexibility after I reach certain benchmarks and performance reviews to increase that amount? But also, if the amount listed is still too low based on your research, I think since they have been transparent on the job posting, it wouldn't hurt to ask. So if there's no information about the salary information on the job posting, I wouldn't bring that up first. But if they've been transparent, if you get that piece of information in the job description, it would then be worth asking either what Amanda said, or if you feel as though even to start off that salary is off and the number should be in another range, it might be fruitful to have those conversations. Now, I can't guarantee you the response you're going to get, whether it's going to be preferable or not. It will really depend on the organization, but based on their response, you can also gauge for the company culture and make a determination point at that point in time and say, do I really want to work for this company who happens to be very rigid and there's no room for flexibility? That's another kind of important data point for you to kind of determine earlier on. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad this was very helpful. So this is essentially what I had for you in an hour and 11 minutes. These are all the different workshops and presentations we normally do separately. So for this group, I put it all together and try to answer some of the most commonly asked questions. So hopefully this was helpful to all of you and those of you who will be watching this recording in the future. If you need any help, any guidance, please reach out to Career Services Center. The information to schedule an appointment will be on our website. You can either request an appointment through your Handshake account or by calling or emailing Career Services Center. We will be happy to help you. Like I said, we are resources provided you by the university. So please utilize them now and in the future as you become an alumni, because once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. We offer services both for students, active students, and alumni in the future. So this is what I have for you. Hopefully, again, you took something out of this presentation. Let's go Mountaineers.
Don't forget, as we're closing up, I just want to remind, if you do want access to that ATS system that Chala mentioned earlier, please go ahead and you can either email me after the fact, or please post your email address prior to leaving the call. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today, and Chala for putting this presentation together. I hope you found it helpful. I know we did. I learned a lot, so thank you.
My pleasure. You all have a great day. Yes, let's finish the semester strong and hope to see some of the students or future students in our offices in the future.